Hi, Marta.
Hi Tatiana, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm fine. So I'm going to start the webinar because I think basically while we're in the practice mode, I just checked on my phone.
Yeah,
I don't think they can go in, like they're still just seeing the screen that the webinar will start soon.
okay.
So I'm going to start it so they will see my welcome screen because I'm already sharing it. I don't know if
Yes,
you can see it or not.
yes, I can.
You can, yeah, okay. And I'm going to activate my video as well.
Okay, shall I do the same?
Yeah.
Might just switch off the light because my light's very bright.
Well, yeah, it's don't know what the weather is like where you are, but it's been absolutely dreadful
Oh,
here.
it's horrendous here. It's
Yeah.
horrible.
Okay, so are you ready? Marina said that she's just tucking her son in bed and she will
Oh,
join
it's good in there.
in, but I'm going to
I
start.
can't hear you quite as well, Tatiana. You were a lot louder a minute ago.
Is it better if I do it like
Yes,
this? Yeah,
that's
I'll
better.
probably I'll hold the mic closer to my
Yeah.
mouth then. Okay, I'm going to start. Hello, everybody. I think I can see people are joining as I'm speaking. If I could ask you to send me a message via chat, just confirming that you can hear me, that would be great. Yeah, that's great. I got one yes. Brilliant. And you can see me as well. Yeah, that's great. Hi. And you can see Marta Tomaszewski as well, I believe, and Marina Chetinalp is going to join us in a minute. So we'll begin in 1 minute. Okay. I can see we have 13 people at the moment, 14. That's great. So let's begin, and hopefully more people will join as well. So first of all, a very warm welcome to this webinar. This is the first webinar of this kind hosted by European Schoolbooks in partnership with the authors and teachers that we have been working with for quite a long time now. My name is Tatiana Amiri, and I'm in charge of marketing for the Russian language at the European Schoolbooks. For those of you who don't know what the company does, we are a UK distributor of language learning and teaching materials. So these are course books, grammar books, easy readers, etc., as well as literature titles in European languages. So that includes Italian, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, and Russian, which is really, really great. So we work with, we have trade customers, these are bookshops. We also work quite closely with language departments at all the UK-based universities, or a majority. We're on partner programs with them. We work with language schools, as well as with individual customers. In Russia, our publishing partners are Zlatoust and Русский язык курсы. I'm sure you're familiar with those two. So basically, I'd say whatever gets published in Russia, which is related to learning and teaching Russian as a foreign language, we get access to it, so we can supply those books to you if necessary. But where I personally have been seeing a gap is actually, like, so we have a lot of good materials, really great course books, etc. But I find that there is a definite gap in resources that support the needs of the UK market. So I think we're lacking some of the materials that support UK teaching community, and especially English speaking students on the local curriculum. So, and as it often happens, occasionally Russian language teachers in the UK become authors and even publishers, and they produce their own materials. And it doesn't surprise me that such materials become really popular. So we have been really lucky to have partnered with some of these teachers and authors. And actually, so today's webinar is actually an example of this partnership. So in a minute, let me see, I hope Marina has joined. I will stop sharing the screen, Marina, once I've given the floor to you, so you will be able to share yours. Just let me just once again go through a couple of rules for this webinar. So as you've already realized, and I sent you an email last night, you can't use your mic at the moment, and you can't use your video at the moment. So this is going to be the case while we're going through all the presentations, but all questions are really, really welcome, and please feel free to ask them either in Russian or English. The reason why we've decided to conduct this webinar in English is because I received a couple of requests from the registrants that their preferred language would actually be English for this one. So please, there is a Q&A option at the bottom of your screens in Zoom, and we will run the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So please keep sending them. We'll answer them, I promise. Again, if you prefer to ask your question verbally, there is an option for you to raise hand. So Zoom allows this, so I will be able to spot it, and then I will give you permission through Zoom to unmute your mic, and you can unmute your video if you want as well. So this is all from me for now. So the way this webinar is structured, so the first Marina will talk about Gcse resources. Then the next presentation will be about A-level resources, and then we'll run the Q&A session at the end. So the last 20 minutes of the webinar we'll dedicate to questions. And after Marina's presentation, I'll just mention one more resource that we have as well in relation to Gcse. So without further ado, I hope, Marina, you're here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Marina can share her presentation and her materials with you. So here we go. Marina, are you here? Can you hear us? Marina? Just my apologies, guys. I think Marina has run into some technical issues. Just bear with me. I'm sorting this. Sorry about that, guys. Marina is having some technical problems joining this webinar, which is, we did practice, and Sod's Law, this is what happens on the actual day. Marta, do you think if we could change the order of the presentations, and if you could start?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I hope everybody can see my screen. So I'll just start my, hopefully you can see me and the screen at the moment. Yes. Okay, so I'm Marta Tomaszewski. I recognize quite a few names on the invitation list. So hello to everybody I know, and introduce myself to people who I don't know yet. And I know people are coming from a lot of different backgrounds. So some people have been teaching Russian for a long time in schools. Some people might be quite new to the A-level, and also teaching native speakers or heritage learners. So to say a little bit about me and Marina. So we are both teachers of Russian in the UK. I'm now no longer teaching full time, but I am tutoring. So I'm quite used to dealing with heritage learner, native speaker candidates, as well as having taught in a school. And similar situation, Marina has taught both learner candidates, English candidates, and also heritage learners who have some Russian background and native speakers to prepare them for the exam. So we established MAR Russian Resources last year, and the reason we set it up was we knew that there was a need for Russian resources, particularly for the new A-level, because although there's some very good materials for the old A-level, there are new topics in this A-level, and also there's all the cultural information that's needed. So we realized that not only do learner candidates need textbooks, they need some information, but also any heritage learners or native speakers also need to prepare for the exam, because they need the content. They need to know how to answer about homelessness in Russia, or about the fall of the Soviet Union, and we can't just assume that they know that. So the materials that we have produced are aimed at those three very different groups of the English candidates who've studied for Gcse and are now carrying on to A-level, the heritage learners who might have learned a bit of Russian formally at home or Saturday schools, and now are preparing for the A-level, and for native speakers who might be, for example, in a boarding school in the UK and entered for the A-level, but they don't quite know what they need to prepare for it. So we knew we needed materials that would cover all these different groups and all the little groups in between. And we thought, what's the best sort of material? And decided that really it's practice papers. So to have practice questions, and all the material we have produced and we're going to produce is based on the exam setup, but we also have extra information to scaffold to help. And that can be used in different ways by the different groups. So I'm going to talk about the first book that we published and that I know some people have already got, which are the practice speaking materials. But we've also published a book on the literature and film, which Marina is going to talk about, hopefully if we resolve the technical difficulties. And that covers every single option in the literature and film, so it covers all the possible set works. And I'm also very pleased to say that we are currently working on a third book, and we're now looking at the listening and reading components and the translation. And rather, so there are 4 different themes at A level, and rather than starting with theme 1, because we knew teachers had a lot of material for that, we're actually starting at the very end and looking at theme 4 on the fall of the Soviet Union and Gorbachev, because we know for teachers that has been the hardest one to find material for. So we're currently working with a practicing teacher in the UK to put together some material. So this first book I wrote together with Marina. For the literature, we had another writer involved, and we're using yet another writer for the theme 4 book. And this is our idea, that we're going to carry on these partnerships. And what's really important for us is that we have a really good mix of having material that's written by native speakers. And if it's not written by a native speaker, if it's anything, for example, that I've written, it's always edited and proofread by a native speaker. And that it's also written and or edited by somebody who knows the UK education system very well. So looking at the practice materials for the speaking, and I'm just trying to scroll down on here. I'm aware that some of you will be familiar with the book, but some people won't. So just to show you the content, give you an idea of what we have. So we decided to write the introductory material in both English and Russian. And our reason for doing that is because it's also something that you might want to give straight to your student or to the parents of your student to have a look at and read the Russian, so that they understand what has to be done in the exam if you have a heritage learner or a native speaker candidate. But also for English learners, it's also good to have some of this vocabulary and some of this information in Russian. And it also means that, for example, if you're a teacher in a school where you then have a candidate who's going to prepare for themselves, you can just give them the booklet, and maybe a tutor or a parent can then help them prepare. So after the introduction and some ideas on how to use the material, we then cover the 4 themes. I'm not going to go into great detail about how the A-level is structured, because I assume either that people know that, or if not, that you can find that information easily on the Pearson website. So I'm not going to go through the structure of the exam, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about how our materials help and what our thinking was behind how we structured the book. So all 4 themes are covered, and you have practice material for all 4 themes, and I'll show you in a minute what the material looks like. But within those 4 themes, there are 3 sub-themes for each theme. So we've got 12 altogether, and every single sub-theme is covered. Now, what will happen in the exam is that the candidate will have a choice of 2 cards, each from one sub-theme, and then they don't get to see the card, they just base their choice on the title of the sub-theme. And because of this, and they're choosing 1 out of 2, cards from a possible 12. Because they are choosing this 1 out of 2 out of a possible 12, it means that they need to cover, and you need to cover with them, all 12 topics, because they don't know which one they're going to get, and you don't know which one they're going to get. So it's important that they've covered all of them. Therefore, we've given you 2 practice cards for each sub-theme. Now, the specification then breaks it down even more into sub-themes. And so then for these 12 sub-themes, all of them have got 2 or 3 or 4 elements that could be covered. Now, we've given you 2 for each sub-theme, and we were very careful when we picked those 2. If there are only 2 available, obviously we covered those 2. But if there were 3 or 4 options, what we did is we looked at the specimen material that was provided by Pearson, and we made sure that we covered the ones that weren't already covered in the specimen material. We did that as our priority, and then we picked another theme, sub-theme. So what you've got here, if you use our book and you look at the specimen material, you have got a card on really on every single topic that could come up in the exam. So that's how we structured our choices. So what have we then got? So as well as all these cards, there's a question bank at the end as well to help with the general conversation on that theme that you then carry on for the exam. And there are also some questions for students to ask, because that's another feature of the exam as well. So there's some material at the end there. So just to give you an idea of what the information we give you looks like, we look at the information about the speaking paper, and here I've just put an excerpt of what we've written in Russian. There's an English version of this as well. This isn't the whole of the information, this is just a part of it to show you how it's been structured. We've then also written a part about how to use this book. And again, I'm showing you the Russian version. There's also an English version of some ideas of how you can use these materials in your teaching. And we've tried to give lots of different ideas and different ways you can use these cards. So what do the cards actually look like? We have tried to make them look as much as possible like the cards that the students will get in the exam. So there's a student card, and then there's a teacher card, and then there's this extra study card, which I'll talk about in a minute. So for example, here we've got something, a card which is on the, where are we, 3rd theme, where they're choosing to talk about either Moscow or Petersburg, and they're talking about the changes of in life in either Moscow or St. Petersburg. And what they would have to do in the exam, they choose either A or B on this card. They would have 5 minutes to prepare. So you've got something that looks just like something they would have in the exam. The teacher card, the questions are very similar to the bullet points that are here on the student card. And they have to get used to predicting what the teacher question is going to sound like. So I'll leave it here on the teacher card so that you can see.
Я просто уже в поту в холодном сижу, слава богу.
Are we okay? I can hear a bit of background noise. Are we okay? I'll carry on. So on the teacher card here, you can see, you would ask the student whether they've chosen either A or B, and then ask them the questions. Now, when you're teaching this, you could go straight into just giving them 5 minutes to prepare, giving them a student card, and you read from the teacher card to see how they do. So for example, if you have a heritage learner or a native speaker, that might work really well just to get their level. But for most candidates, and for most students, you're going to want to prepare first. So what could you do? You could just give them either the teacher card or the student card and ask them for homework to go and prepare, and to get some ideas and do some research themselves. Or you could give them the study card, and this is the sort of unique bit of our book in that we give them some ideas. Now, there's lots of different ways you could use the study card. You could get them to do their research first and then give them this card, so that they then get some extra ideas. You could, especially if they're English learner candidates, give them this card first, go over it in a lesson, discuss lots of the ideas, get them to translate the useful information that's given here. You could study this with them and then give them the card to do as a practice speaking a couple of weeks later and see how much they remember. There's lots of different ways of doing it. What we try to do with the vocab, and what we have done, is to limit it to a certain number of words for each topic. And it's not exhaustive, it's not everything they could possibly talk about, but it gives them some good ideas, but also gives them, especially for heritage learners and native speakers, it gives them an idea of the level of language that's expected, and just to get that register right. And then the useful information has been taken from a huge range of sources. I had great fun researching it all. But of course, it's not the only information out there. And some of the statistics they might find other statistics that disagree with what's written here. So this could be used for research purposes. Either they can just use it for language and to translate it and to take out useful words, or they can be looking for information themselves. They could be given the task to prepare a card for the rest of their classmates. So they all have a card on a different topic and then they have to present it. So there's lots of different ways of using this information. The really important thing to stress is that we're not saying they should learn all of this information off by heart and just produce this in the exam. That will not be effective. Also because they don't know exactly what the question will be. But this is a good starting point for them, and it gives them an idea of the type of information that they need. And also it could trigger something where they think, okay, I'm interested in this little bit of information. Actually, I want to find out more. And that might end up being their independent research project. So also another reason of the way we structured it is to make sure that it wasn't too overwhelming for the students. So they've got 24 of these cards. They can have this for revision quite near to the exam, or you might feel that you want to teach it throughout your course and have this book for them to use. So lots of different ways that it can be used. And then just to show you what we've got here, one part of what we have at the end. So there's a question bank with questions on each theme. So after they've answered the questions in the exam, the two that you've asked, you then have to expand and ask them some more questions on that theme. So we've given some example questions, but these aren't the only ones obviously that can be asked, but it gives you some ideas, which, you know, it can be just as difficult for us conducting the exam as for the student. So it gives us some models to use, but it also means that they get used to these certain set phrases and how a question might sound. And you could also get them to think, how would they answer all of these, but also how could they change them to make it relevant to a slightly different topic. Now they have to ask you questions as well, and I haven't got this here, but I have also provided a question bank. There is in the book also a question bank for students to ask you a question, because that's also part of the A-level syllabus. So just to recap, that really was a whistle-stop tour around the book, but to recap, this book focuses on the speaking exam and not on the independent research project, but on the cards that they have to answer. By learning everything in this book, that doesn't mean that they have got everything that they need for the exam. They have to be aware that there are a few other little sub-themes to look at, and also that they need to study themselves and to expand on the vocabulary that's given here, expand on the ideas. But it's a really good set of materials so that they can see the structure of how they can prepare. The other thing I would just mention is when you use the book and you get students to prepare materials themselves, a really good thing I have found is, with the students' permission, to keep a copy of what they've produced, because then that's just extra information and extra material for us to use in the future as well. So if you wanted those little elements here, so for example, for Masovая kultura, here we've got cirk and taniec, but it doesn't cover muzika, that's also on the syllabus. If a student prepares a card that is based, for example, on the specimen exam material or on a past paper card, ask their permission, keep that material, and then you can add it to this whole body of material for your students. So I will stop there because I'm aware I've been talking for quite a while about that, and I can see that Marina has managed to join us, so that's brilliant. And Marina, I will pass over to you now. So I'll stop showing my screen.
Thank you, Marta, and apologies. I promise it wasn't a Russian spy bug or anything like that, but it had a bit of an issue with getting me onto the UK Zoom for some reason. I'm not sure why though, so sincere apologies, but here I am now. And so the book I'm going to talk about is another A-level resource. Hang on. Am I on share screen? Sorry. Tatiana, am I on shared screen? I'm sort of...
No, not at the moment, Marina.
Again. Looks like the connection is going a bit funnier again. That's really interesting. Hang on. Right, share screen. Right. For some reason, it doesn't give me an option to share what I wanted to share. This way. Can you share it? Can you see it now? Sorry.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, okay, lovely. Sorry about that. Yeah, lovely, thank you. Okay, so another A-level booklet, which we have produced in collaboration with another teacher, with another colleague, a Russian graduate, is a literature booklet, which Martha kind of touched on. And I'm going to show you some ideas again, which we were thinking about while producing it. So our vision of actually how you could use this book. So as you can see, it's based completely on the curriculum of the Edexcel A-level exam. So what we tried to implement is the prescribed texts which are necessary to study. And as you all know, the students have to choose 2 prescribed texts, and one of those has to be a book. So what we have done, instead of creating just a little booklet on certain texts, so we've decided that we will try and put together materials which would address every particular prescribed text specified in the Edexcel A-level specification. So again, as Marta was mentioning, it's not an it's not a resource that you can use from A to Z. So we try to show rather how to approach the question, how to manage the task at hand, how to help students to analyze the text, rather than producing pre-prepared answers which students could then learn by heart. I think what we're trying to do here is avoiding the situation where students would actually see it as a complete resource, and they would say, okay, if I learn this particular essay, I will be fine. That's not the case here. And I think we were trying to avoid it as much as possible. So students, and by doing so, we hope that there wouldn't be answers that would be seen as pre-learned, or there will be a lot of repeated answers, particularly if you have if there's a center with a large number of students taking A-levels, including some public schools as well, where Russian perhaps is taken up with a bit bigger enthusiasm. So again, so we have a section how to use the book, and I think so the logistic behind developing this resource was that we wanted to give students some exposure to the key essay phrases, stroke terminology, which would be suitable to be used, because perhaps some of us, while teaching a literature resource, a literature text, thinking, okay, as long as they analyze it, and as long as they're writing in a really good language, particularly for native speakers or heritage learners, which have a much better understanding and feel of the language, that might seem okay. So it might seem a perfect essay for them. However, the curriculum of the English educational system, particularly with modern foreign languages, is slightly different from what you would expect a native learner in Russia to write like in the exam. So we have to sort of tick all the boxes in terms of the specification, in terms of the assessment criteria, in order to achieve the top band. And one of those is making sure that students are using the terminology and the essay phrases which are necessary. Okay. We also have included some suggested questions, because we know that with new specifications, it will be very difficult to obtain some past papers, and of course some past papers, particularly this year when the exam hasn't taken place. So we will all start running out of ideas of topics and themes on which the students can practice writing their essays. We have also made sure that we include some historical and social background information into our resource. And I think this, in a way, is very useful as a generic learning and teaching material, because as you could remember, or as you probably know, some of the literature and films are covering or cross-referencing with some of the topics that need to be studied overall for GCSE, be it speaking, reading, or listening. So, for example, if we talk about Solzhenitsyn or Baranskaya or Ulitskaya or Utamlёnные солнцем, they cover certain periods in the Russian history or in the Soviet Union history. And when we talk particularly about theme 4, which is like perestroika and what caused perestroika, etc., etc., I think having some background information, some knowledge about what actually preempted those events of 1980s and 1990s is very useful. Again, going to Kafkaski Plennik of Chechen's War, Leviathan, which completely talks about 1990s, etc. So even if you take this resource and thinking, okay, well, I only take 2 literature texts, why do I need the whole book? So there's loads of useful information, as you will see from the sample pages, which you can then take away and use it in your speaking lesson, in your reading lesson, in your translation lesson, etc., etc. And we also have provided some possible answers. Again, I'm saying it's possible answers, and they're actually extracts rather than answers, because we try to avoid pre-learned, memorized essays in the exam, particularly from larger centers. So just without further ado, so I've decided to start off with a bit of a modern text, because I'm sure most of you, a lot of you have taught Pikava Dama, which is a very good classic, which has been very popular with the exam candidates. However, the reason I've taken Nedelia как неделя by Baranska is that, just to reiterate what I've just said, so you can, even if you don't want to take this as a literature text, you decide, no, I like my Pikava Dama, I'm going to stick to this, absolutely fine. But I'm going to show you how you could actually use this particular material, even if you're not doing it for your literature part of the exam, but taking it as a topic which you can then develop and discuss with your students in terms of using it for theme 4, for example, which is like late 1980s and 1990s in Russia. So as you could see, we've got some nice ключевые слова, so some key vocabulary, which are sometimes quite related to the text itself. However, if you look a bit further down, you will definitely see that there are some very generic words which students might need, or not even might, but they should know when they come to discuss and talk and learn about theme 4. And that's how it's structured. So we've got the ключевые слова to start with. So the students have a good understanding of a background information and the words they're going to meet in the text. Then we included some useful phrases for essay answer, for essay writing. Again, this is just an example. Normally we have about 5, 6 or 7 of those. And again, looking at these particular examples, you can see how your students could then take it further and use it, let's say, in their oral topic, should they encounter a card discussing perestroika, etc., etc. Then we also always have полезные слова и выражения для сочинения. So we always focus, we have a section that focuses on those key terminology that is useful for that particular, not for that particular, but for essay writing as such. So again, you don't necessarily have to use it with Baranska only, but I think it enlarges the vocabulary and the essay phrases sort of luggage, let me put it that way, that the students can have. So the more they have, the better, because as I mentioned earlier, one of the key criteria in assessing a good essay for a top band is to make sure that there are enough essay phrases used throughout for organization of the essay. And as you can see from here, they're very generic, so they can be taken away and used in your particular literature work, which you prefer to study. And then we've got that one of the extracts. As you can see, again, it's very short, so we're not claiming it's a full essay, but we are giving a glimpse of what good essay should look like. So this is a second extract. It means that this one is slightly improved, and that's what probably a middle learner candidate would write, or a bit weaker heritage learner would write without being taught. So in the beginning, I probably haven't mentioned clearly, but we do have an option of 3 samples. So we've got 3 different extracts. The first one is very, very weak one, which students have to work with. The second one is this, which looks, if you have a look at it, it looks much more developed, written in better language with nearly no grammar mistakes. And then we have the third one, which is the one that we would like students to write like. So we would use as an example of a very good piece of writing. So in the weak one, we normally would write commentaries, what is not right with that particular piece of work, what is not right with the essay. With the second one, we don't normally give anything to students. Instead, we actually ask them to do some tasks. So by looking at that middle essay, they're thinking, okay, what is not so good in this essay? what can I do to make it even better than it is now? Okay. And in the third one, again, we provide some ideas, some commentaries about what is good in that final piece of an essay, so that the students can actually work first as a differentiated material at their own speed and at their own knowledge and level, but also they can see how they can actually improve. So that was about literature. And then obviously, as I mentioned, there are two texts that the students have to study. And so they can be either two books, or they can be a combination of a book and a film. So, and as you could see from the content page, we do have films as well. So this is an example of a film. And again, you can see that we've given a topic to each of the section, each of the film. And which, again, you didn't see it in in Baranska Nedelya как Nedelya, because we're just showing you some glimpse, so you don't kind of have a feeling. But then you would have, so each unit would also have that social cultural reference. So again, the reason I've chosen Utamlёnные солнцем is because it might be a very useful resource to use as a preempt before you actually start talking about perestroika, glasnost, etc. for your theme 4, even if you don't study this. Or it can be very well combined should you decide to do Ivan Denisovich by Solzhenitsyn, because again, there's some background information here which is useful for students to know, even if you're studying a slightly different text from the list. And then, as I mentioned, we try to invent, in a way, 3 possible essay questions that the student might encounter. And to make sure, we also try to make sure that they're completely different from what you will get in sample specification or in sample papers, for all sorts of reasons, because we can't obviously copy what Edexcel has done, but also that the students have access to more practice materials and practice questions. So again, just to reiterate, these were just sample pages, and probably they looked a bit scattered, but each unit again has just to quickly go through this again so you understand what it is. So it has the key vocabulary. It then has some useful phrases for writing an essay, okay? And they're normally broken down in 2 options. So one is more about historical information and one is more about the essay and characters itself or themselves. Then there are 3 extracts, starting from the very poor, ending with a perfect one, with tasks or questions or commentaries, and that's in every unit. And then every unit also has a social questions for essay writing. I think that's it in terms of the A-level books. So are we ready to move to GCSE? Tatiana, what do you think?
Yes, I think we are. Thank you, Marina and Marta. Please don't forget to send through your questions. Again, by the end of the webinar, I'll show you the slide with all the titles, and also I'll tell you where you can get them from as well. And I'll send this information to you by email. So yeah, we obviously changed the order of the presentations a little bit, which is fine. So just to give, Marina is going to talk about her GCSE resource in a minute, but just to give her some time to prepare, I want to mention another resource which was produced by another teacher. You probably know, some of you know him. His name is Stephen Rich, and he's the teacher of Russian at the Winchester Boys College. So he created the GCSE preparation course called Red Square Russian, and I'll show you the slide in a second. So basically, very similarly, Steve's motivation was actually to produce resources that would support the Russian language learning in British schools, and he did feel that kind of the publishers of the Russian materials have neglected the UK market. So basically he couldn't find good enough materials, so he created his own course in partnership with his wife Olga. So I'm going to briefly show you the cover. I only have the teacher's booklet with me at the moment. So at the moment there is book 1 and there is also book 2, which is a blue cover, and it's a course. It covers basically the elementary level. So for book 1 assumes very little knowledge of Russian. So everything is introduced very gradually. By the end of book 1, students should be able to read and understand text at quite good Gcse level, and obviously book 2 expands on this knowledge and takes them further. So one of the key features of this course book is that it's kind of a course book and a workbook in one. So students are encouraged to take notes, so they don't need to have a separate workbook for the practice. So it's quite authentic. There is some really good examples of modern Russian. There are lots of cultural references, which I think will be quite appealing to the younger audience. And obviously all the exercises I included that would help students to practice all the skills. So it's reading, listening, speaking, and Russian. There are vocabulary lists and grammar overviews. So it's quite a comprehensive, quite a nice course, which has been really well received by the teaching community, and it was reviewed by the Independent Schools Modern Languages Association, and it received really good reviews as well. So at the moment there is book 1 and book 2 available. I know Stephen was planning to work on book 3 during this summer, so hopefully, fingers crossed, by summer of 2021 we'll have book 3. So book 1 and 2, there are also teachers' booklets available for each book, and all the audio materials can be purchased as well. They can they're provided separately. This is normally on a USB thumb drive or as a bundle with teachers' booklet. So at the moment, because of Steve's really busy schedule, I did invite him to take part in this webinar, but unfortunately he is very busy with multiple projects, both in his professional and personal life. So he couldn't do it. So at the moment, we are the only distributor of Stephen's books. He used to do it himself, but then it's just, I think he didn't have time to do it. So he's commissioned the European Schoolbooks to do this for him. So please be aware, this is a good resource. This is the entire course, and it's been really well received by the teaching community here. And Marina, if you are ready to talk about your Gcse materials, yeah, great. Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen. Marina, you need to unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, yeah, it's all these touch screens, computers. Another GCSE resource which European bookshops are selling for us is the GCSE speaking cards, which has been produced just for myself, and in a way that was the first ever book that we have actually started as MAR Russian Resources. This only focuses on the speaking element of the exam. So I don't claim that it covers the whole syllabus, and it's only to practice part 1 and part 2, as you can see. So it doesn't cover presentation, which obviously is an independent task anyway. It doesn't cover general questions, general conversation questions, for the reason that perhaps those of you who have tried the previous year exam and this year school-based assessment would probably notice that you could use the questions that we had used for the old specification as well, apart from obviously adding some questions on ecology and perhaps festivals and more generic issues like charity work, which jumps, as we all know, into A-level type of questioning. So this one covers, as I said, part one, which is a role play, and I tried to go over all of the themes necessary to practice as advised, specified in Edexcel curriculum. So as you probably know, role play cards do not cover theme 5, which is sort of ecology and sort of that hard topic, and that's why you wouldn't see a card on it there. Part 2 does include, which is, so part 1 is a role play and part 2 is a picture description. It's a card-based task that already should include materials from all 5 themes from Edexcel Gcse curriculum. So the book is split into 2 parts. So part 1 is separate, so the cards are separate, and part 2 cards are separate. And what we've also done with the publisher, by the way, it's been published by Zlatoust. So just in case, so if some of you are familiar with those resources, you would know the quality of the materials and the quality of, you know, how they do their work generally in their publishing materials. So the first part covers students' cards, and the second sort of half of the book covers the teachers' cards. And again, they are aligned with part 1 and part 2, which is role play and picture-based task. And again, if you see, you could see that topic 1 on student card is daily life, food and restaurants. So the same goes for cards for teachers. The first ever task on the teacher side will be, again, daily life, food and restaurants. So once you get into grips with this, it's really easy to flip-flop between the pages. It looks slightly probably complicated, but it actually is quite easy. The reason we haven't put student cards straight away after the teacher's cards is because if you're using it with a student alone, or let's say you have a little group, so it's nice for students not to actually see the answers or the possible questions that the teacher is going to ask them. So if anything, they're mainly referring to the first half of the book. So just to give you some example of the cards for candidates. So again, they are all laid out in the way that Edexcel would normally do them. So starting with instructions to candidates, simple instructions, and then the task itself. Okay, and again, I try to keep to the layout of the Edexcel specification. So that thus giving students practice with actually seeing the cards, making sure that they understand what they have to do in each task, what the question mark there for, what the question mark is there for, etc., etc. You might notice that's for question marks for number 4 and number 5, I've actually got some options here. And again, for foundation tier, you would have it. And because it was a practice resource, it's not an exam sort of, or not a sample exam card. So sometimes you will notice that I've given students some options so that they can actually practice, they know what to do. From my experience, I can assure you that even with my heritage learners, I give them this card and they're looking at me saying, what is this? So without actually giving them some help or some prompts, it's difficult to manage, even, you know, without any practice, even for native speakers or heritage learners. Okay, so, and then you've got, for instance, the healthy lifestyle again, which is, again, has instructions to candidate as in the card, and then, you know, possible questions, possible task bullet points as they appear on the card. So I'm not going to scroll down to all of those, but moving down to the second part, which is a picture-based task, which is task 2 in the exam, a bit longer task. You will see that it has a color picture for the student in the student card part, and then it follows exactly the same structure as they would see or come across in the actual exam. So it and sometimes even if you see that some of the language looks or sounds a bit abrupt, but I try to I studied, the sample cards of the Edexcel, and I try to stick to the way they ask the question, so that the candidates suddenly aren't taken aback in the actual exam when they suddenly have a slightly shortened version of perhaps the way we would ask in a normal conversation. So then there are questions, and again, obviously because it's a practice card, I've given them some options like will, are, so the teachers can actually be at ease without thinking, okay, I'm asking a female or a male. And then again, there's a unpredicted element, which is a question mark again. So they replicate exactly what is there. So that's the international global dimensions, which is one of the latest topics which have been introduced anew. So they weren't in the old Gcse curriculum. So that's hence I'm showing you these particular cards so that you know that I have included some of the newest types of cards and specification requirements in this particular booklet. And then there's global dimension environmental issues again, which I think is a little bit of a pain for a lot of teachers. And again, I'm suggesting some possible bullet points and tasks that they have to do and they have to think about. And yeah, and then an unpredicted element as well with the exclamation marks. If we move to the teachers section of I'll try and find the same cards. So, so if we look at the food, so the reason this looks a bit longer is, as I said already, so sometimes obviously I took a liberty to improvise a little bit because I was thinking as a teacher, not just as an examiner or as a person who is actually writing exam papers. So I've given students some options or some more ideas or some prompts, like you can see here in number 4. So they need to, you know, so you as a teacher, that's exactly from the candidate card, from the teacher's card, but I also left it here as well so that the teacher is reminded and gets into a habit of knowing, okay, here I actually need to stop, I need to silence myself, and the student needs to ask me questions. And so, and here is the practice. So, and if we look at the picture-based one, well, let's take our favorite environmental issues. Again, I'll probably scroll down the picture because you've seen the nicer colored one. So again, I've suggested, again, the format is exactly the same as it is in the sample papers or in the actual exam. And I've developed some of my own questioning, which you can use. So that's how it looks, okay? And then you've got more topics. And as I said, each theme has got a practice paper and a practice teachers and student cards for both role play and the picture-based discussion. So in terms of how I would use these cards, just firstly, if you have a book or if you have a few books and you have a small class, I sometimes even give it to students and say, well, one of you will be a teacher, one of you will be a student, because it gives them first it gives them an opportunity to practice the language. Secondly, they're practicing asking questions, which is another good skill that they need, because as you've noticed in role play, they need to ask questions. And thirdly, it's a nice practice, nice group activity, and they're actually correcting themselves when they're listening to each other. So I'm not only using them myself as a teacher, themselves as a student, I let them do it as a pair or group work. So that's one good way of using it, or a different way of using it. Particularly if you've got a few books, you know, in a school, then you don't need to worry about photocopying as much. Another useful way of using it is actually, even if you know, you kind of know that perhaps because my student has selected environment for his presentation, he's not going to get picture-based task on environment. However, you will have to ask him questions at the end of that presentation. So these questions that I'm recommending for the picture-based task, you could definitely use to practice his post-presentation answers, let's say. Or for general conversation, again, if you think that your student might get theme 5, which is a difficult one, again, why not use this card as a springboard for practicing the resource, practicing the material, and then using some of these questions as the very final task of the exam, which is task 3, part 2, when you have to ask them general questions about environment, let's say. So that's another way how I would use it. So I wouldn't necessarily stick it and use it just for part 1 and part 2. I would use it for any day practice, any part of the exam practice. And obviously the vocabulary itself, which you can again revise and repeat, is useful for listening and reading and writing, because by even describing a picture, even if they think that they will not be getting this card, they're practicing all that vocabulary, which they will come across in other parts of the exams for sure, of the exam for sure. I think that's it from me, because I'm also a bit aware of the time. So if there are any questions which I haven't clarified or haven't answered, I think we'll probably try and cover them in the Q&A session.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Marina. I think we do have a few questions. Let's have a look. Yeah, so I can see that there were questions too about the titles of the books. So let me just very quickly, while maybe Marina or Marta will answer a question from Marina Burrell. There is a question about the content, about A-Level Speaking Task 3 project. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it. So let me just very quickly show you the screen, which lists all the books that were...
You stopped sharing your screen.
Oh, shall I stop sharing the screen? Sorry.
I think I can just kind of override it, so it's okay.
Okay,
yeah.
Sorry, I think I've done something. Yeah.
No, I think it's okay now. I'll just show you. So all the resources that we talked about today are available from European Schoolbooks. So these are all the titles that we covered. I believe there is another resource that might be available soon from us, and a very good one, Gcse resource called На старт внимания марш, which, fingers crossed, we will be distributing very soon. This it's a 4-module GCSE preparation book, which will be offered in a digital format only, so it won't be as a physical book. It will be either as a PDF or USB. We haven't kind of ironed out all the details, so please, we'll keep you posted. So once these materials are available, you'll be the first ones to know. But so you can see the list of all the resources we spoke about during this seminar. I also included the ESB codes around here, and I'll send this to you as well. This is mainly because our Russian bookshop website does not support the Russian language. So a lot of stuff needs to be inputted either as the original English title or in transliteration. So sometimes it doesn't render results really well, but with the ESB codes, you will definitely be able to find all these books. All the books are in stock. They can be ordered online from us. Our warehouse is in Cheltenham. We dispatch the books pretty much within the 1 or 2 working days from the date of the order. So, well, with the new academic year just around the corner, just a few days away, you should be okay, or maybe the books may arrive just a little bit later, but still pretty much on your target dates. Yeah, so another, very quickly, I just wanted to show you all the useful links. This is again European Schoolbooks. This is our generic website. There is the Russian bookshop website, which I recommend that you guys use more often. So all the titles, including literature titles and all the learning materials that we distribute that are related to Russian as a foreign language can be found there. And for those of you who actually live in London, we have a physical shop as well. It's on Gloucester Road, so it's quite centrally located. It's open, and so please feel free to drop by. And there are email addresses for you to get in touch with us, and please do keep in touch. And there is just one more, before we jump to Q&As, there is just one more resource I wanted to mention, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. That's the Russian language teaching community called Russian Teachers Group, which is a great community we work with, and they run really good annual event, which is the Russian Teachers Group meeting, usually held in March. Sadly, this year we couldn't all meet up because of the coronavirus situation, but fingers crossed it will resume next year. So as I said, all these slides will be shared with you at the end of this webinar, just to give me maybe a day to put it all together. And yeah, if you're ready, I don't know, is it Marina or Marta who is going to answer the question about the, from Marina Burrell, I can see about A-level speaking, task 3.
I could answer that. So I suppose because I've spoken on the speaking book.
Yeah, sorry, Marta, just I'm not sure if all other attendees could see
shall I read
the questions. So is that all right?
So, yeah, Marina Burrell was asking for task 3 for the independent research project. Says it appears to be the most challenging for candidates. Are there any materials recommendations for its preparation in your books? There isn't, and the reason for that is really because of the spirit of the exam, and because it is meant to be an independent research project and teachers can only be involved in certain stages of preparing it. We were very wary that if we did provide anything, it could go against the spirit of the exam, which is that students really have to do that research on their own, and that teachers can provide some guidance to begin with, but then really it has to be done by the students on their own. So because of that, we did consider it. We did look at whether there's anything we could do, but it didn't make sense, because if we had done, for example, put an example one in there, we were worried that then students might use that too much as a model. So because of the nature of the exam and the spirit of it, that's why there's nothing in there. Marina also asked if the books, the information we've shown are pilot copies, and asked if the layout could be improved to make them look more attractive for learners. Well, we've shown you today just paragraphs from them, and also the contents page. So that's not the final way they look. What we've done is shown you bits of information. So it's not overtly designed. There is quite a lot of just text in the books, but that's because of the age group of those students and because of the nature of the material in there. So we haven't shown you the full layout of it. What we've done is really shown the content. And no, both those books, they're not pilots. They have been for sale for a while, but we have got a third one that is in production at the moment for theme 4.
However, Marta, maybe I can just step in a little bit, just to say that, yes, they do look a bit better when they're in the full book, because our publisher has actually done that for us. So they've done all the layouts of the book. So they look quite professional, and, you know, like in a normal bookshop, you will buy a book. But however, Marina, any suggestions in terms of how you think the layout might be more helpful would be very useful for us to take on board when we are kind of looking at developing the layout for the third book, which Marta has just mentioned. So by all means, if you think that, okay, maybe too much text on one page is too much, please, you know, share your comments, and we'll look into it and take it on board if we find it's useful.
I don't know if there's any other questions.
I can see another question. It's also from Marina. Are A-level candidates taught research skills at school?
Well, they should be taught that by their teachers. Yes, yeah. And there's some really useful information on the Pearson website about preparing for that, and some of the material goes across for languages as well, so it's not necessarily all Russian specific, but there are some good materials on the Pearson website for preparing students for that independent research.
But also perhaps just again to elaborate a little bit on that. So as I mentioned, in the A-level book, again, it's not an exhaustive, it's not like the finite resource. However, the way we laid out that social and historical background information is actually a bit of an example of what sort of information, what level of information and what level of presentation the student should achieve, for their independent research project. I think that might be a bit of a starting point to share that with them, to say, well, look, this is, how you could summarize the information, this is how you could present it. Perhaps, even using some of it as a practice material, so the student could perhaps read some of those extracts we've supplied, and perhaps practice retelling them or telling you the summary of those. That gives them practice in terms of summarizing the text, looking at a harder, more advanced formal language and putting it into their own words. I think that I would probably use it as a springboard, as a starting point for developing their formal speaking skills and summarizing skills for that research project for speaking. So that the A-level information, the literature book information.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Or suggestions.
Or suggestions, yes. If not, so shall we wrap up? I just, you can always get in touch with me. My email address is in one of the slides, and I think you all received some emails from me prior to this event. Any feedback, any comments, very, very welcome. This is our first ever webinar as the company, so I hope you have enjoyed it. I certainly have. Our plan is to continue with this format. There will be a short survey which I will be sharing later on, so your feedback, your comments are greatly appreciated, as we really want to get it right and select really good topics, really interesting topics for you in the future. Thank you all guys for joining, and my absolutely massive thank you to Marina and Marta for being so supportive of the idea and for basically making it all happen. So thank you everybody for joining, for participating. Please stay in touch, and I'll definitely be in touch with you. So yeah, have a lovely weekend, enjoy the bank holiday, and all the best with the new academic year.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you, guys.